Yo, what's good, Spirit Squad? Today, we're going to be taking a look at a really exciting new version of Blue-White Spirits, and it adheres to the best rules of modern deck building. The first rule is that if you want to make your deck better, put a bunch of Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2 cards in it. Job done.
If I pick the top tier, just pick a top tier. You want to win, yo? Pick a fucking top tier.
The second rule is that you should probably be playing a companion. User Destar from Sweden is doing both of these things. We're playing a bunch of things with Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2 logos, and we get to play Yorion Sky Nomad. That's a really exciting inclusion because anybody who's had to face a companion deck without having a companion of your own usually knows that you're just kind of starting on uneven ground against these decks. And now we no longer have to do that. Let's check out the deck lists. So this is going to be the deck list that Destar had posted, and I kind of took notice of this list when he got 5th place in a Modern Challenge. Seeing 5th place in a Modern Challenge with Spirits is already pretty exciting stuff, right? The archetype is pretty good, Lurrus just got banned, there's a bunch of shakeups going on, and usually when there's a bunch of shakeups going on, really you just want to be playing something that was previously top tier so that you can take advantage of what the format is doing. But Destar decided to play the good stuff, the Spirits, and make it top tier. And I really like that about this. What he's done here is taken out the Aether Vials, put in a giant pile of creatures, but also some cool ZOOMER cards. This deck is playing 4 copies of Prismatic Ending and 4 copies of Solitude on top of the normal Skyclave Apparition. So this thing's going to be super prepared for all the creature matchups. It's very exciting. This deck can compete with Rags because you just got 12 main deck removal spells. That's even more than the Murktide region deck is playing, and it's almost as many as Jund plays. You get to play a bunch of creatures that still protect themselves from removal, including the inclusion of Kira, which hasn't been in a list in a pretty long time. I, of course, am a huge fan of Kira. I've played it in the past, I will play it again. This list also gets to play 4 copies of Subtlety in the main, so if you find yourself fighting against something like Primeval Titans or Tron or any of that nonsense, this list is really well prepared to fight that. You even get to play 2 copies of Teferi Time Raveler, and Teferi serves double duty here.
Duty?
First, Teferi's both blue and white. That means it's pitchable to both Subtlety and Solitude. Already exciting stuff. And of course, when Teferi's on the battlefield, I don't have to explain to anybody just how good that is. But you get a couple of extra points for bouncing your own creatures with Teferi in a Spirits deck. You get to do the cool Spell Queller thing, which has been one of those things that's been a known interaction for a pretty long time. No deck other than Spirits actually wants to play it, but it's pretty godlike. The way it works is that you play a Teferi and then you play a Spell Queller. Your spell gets kidnapped, your life sucks, but not for the Spirits player. After you have a Spell Queller kidnap a spell, you then bounce the Spell Queller back to your hand. Now you have the Spell Queller that you can use again on a new spell, but remember, they're trying to cast the spell that was locked down. Well, when you cast a spell that was locked down, it goes back on the stack just like any other spell. However, this is not at sorcery speed, and when that happens, Teferi looks at that and goes,
"Now hold on,"
and that spell just stays in exile. Again, sucks to be you, but that's a cool thing you could do. You can rinse and reuse the enter the battlefield abilities from things like Solitude and Subtlety. Skyclave Apparition rocks pretty hard. You can get rid of Skyclave Apparition, they get an illusion token, you can bounce the illusion token. Teferi is really good in this deck. So I actively really like what's happening here. There's all 4 Selfless Spirits that helps protect against blue-white control, which I think is making a pretty big resurgence here. And the sideboard I'm also a pretty big fan of. 3 copies of Burns and Forge Tender help out a lot against things like Rags, like Darcy early. You get to fight against all of these super low to the ground decks that are trying to mess around with you. Burns pretty big. There's a lot of red things in the format. Also, yeah, Fury sucks. So in case anybody wasn't already aware of that, Burns and Forge Tender takes care of all of that nonsense. There's 3 Force Negation, I like that. All 4 copies of Kataki. I don't know that that's not ODing, but Destar apparently really did not want to lose to Hammer Time. So 4 copies of Kataki it is. And Sanctify Intervex is just a card that I've been on for a while. I've been soft predicting that Dredge is going to make a bit of a comeback as far as Modern is concerned. Now that Lurrus is banned, Dredge has been unbanned, if you will. So expect to see that. and 3 copies of Sanctifier in Vac is pretty great preparation for that. To that end, we've actually gone ahead and drawn up a deck list of our own. Check this out. Here, what I've done is I've gone ahead and put the Aether Vials back in. I've also taken out the Spectral Sailors and I've put in Giver of Runes because I'm trying to hedge a little harder towards the removal spells. Also, with Lurrus being banned out of the format, I expect to see a lot of people playing like miscellaneous Ren and 6 piles that include things like Jund, like Cryptic Command decks, any nonsense that really has like Ren and 6 and then a bunch of permanents. To that end, I would much rather play a 1/2 that doesn't die to Ren and 6 and can protect our other creatures than a Spectral Sailor which dies pretty hard to a Ren and 6. So that was kind of the reasoning behind that. I did, however, take out one of the Selfless Spirits. We're only going to be playing 3 in this list. In that spot, we've got a second Kira in the main. I also took out all 4 copies of Subtlety from the main, and I moved 3 of them to the sideboard where I've always had them. Here, I've got an extra copy of Glasspool Mimic, and I'm really hoping that does some work. But we also had to make room for the Aether Vials from somewhere. However, we kept a lot of the spell lands. I've still got 2 copies of Iganjo, I've still got 2 copies of Otawara. These lands have been absolutely godlike in spirits, and the longer y'all listen to me talk about those lands, the more I will talk about them because I have a lot of room to sing their praises. I also wanted more spell lands in this deck though, especially since we're playing Aether Vials. I've got 2 copies of Horizon Canopy here, which honestly may or may not be great. Horizon Canopy is only medium when your list actually wants to get to 5 mana sometimes, so we'll see how much I like those. But I did put in a second copy of Moorland Haunt here, which of course I'm going to tell you I actively love. I always love Moorland Haunt. If I could play 6 and have it be reasonable, I'd probably try it. In the sideboard here, I've got 3 copies of Thalia because let's be real, would it even be a Dre video if I wasn't playing Thalia in Spirits? I've also got the 3 copies of Force of Negation here because I think that was a great inclusion. There's probably going to be a bunch of Crash Cade decks, there's going to be a bunch of Living End decks, things like Tron still exist, and Force of Negation helps against all of those things. I kept the 3 copies of Sanctifier in Vac because like I said, I think that was a pretty good inclusion. I did, however, take down the Burnt Forge Tender to just 2 copies. And like I said previously, we've got 3 copies of Subtlety in the board. But that's going to be our list. So now that we've gone ahead and gotten to discuss both deck lists, the difference between them, and why I made some changes to the original list that Destar posted, we're going to go ahead and jump right into a 5-match league. That video is going to be clickable at the end of this or right in the video description. Also important, speaking of this deck list, we got to go ahead and discuss it a little more at length with MTG Ectoplasm on his podcast. So that link will also be at the end of this video or also in the video description. He's a pretty great guy. Check out the podcast, lots and lots of spirits related content. So that's going to be our video for today. Make sure you like this video if you like what you're watching as always. Sub to the channel if you haven't already done so. And I will see y'all on the next one.